Welcome to the Power of Owning Your Career podcast, the show for women who are seeking more fulfillment in life and simply not getting it from their current situation. We focus specifically on careers, but hey, we spend a lot of time in our careers, so making changes here will definitely create an impact in your overall happiness. I'm your host, Simone Morris, and my mission is to empower women to succeed. I believe that in order to powerfully own your career, you must decide and claim that you want to sit in the driver's seat. You must know that you deserve better and be willing to not only do the requisite work, but be willing to go out on a limb to ensure your success. Each episode focuses on profiling a leader who is clearly demonstrating ownership of their career. Join me and my guests as we explore career journeys and bring you actionable strategies to use to get into the driver's seat for your career. Because ultimately, your career is your responsibility. Let's get into the show. It's season 5 and super excited to have on this episode the fabulous Cindy Constable, who is a business transformation strategist and founder of CRK Consulting. Cindy is an accomplished public speaker and has worked in the finance sector for the past 25 years. I believe you will really enjoy Cindy's career story of how she got to the driver's seat. I know I certainly did. Please enjoy this week's episode of the Power of Owning Your Career podcast. Cindy, so pleased to have you on the Power of Owning Your Career podcast. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Simone. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, awesome. We're happy to have you. And my first question is, take us on the journey to the driver's seat in your career. Tell us about how you got there.
Wow. Gosh, I guess that's going back a ways to the beginning of time, right? I think what I would call my first big girl job is what made me realize I could be the driver of my career. So prior to that, it was more like, okay, I'm in college. I need to get a good job to support myself. And, what am I going to do? And I was, a business major, so it was kind of like broad. And I started initially working at this construction firm as like the front desk person. And their like bookkeeping person kind of quit. And so I started kind of paying invoices, doing payroll, doing some of the bid spec sheets for RFPs for proposals that they were putting in. And then suddenly I was like handing out the paychecks, running the office, doing all the things. And I was now the office manager. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute. I can like be in charge of things. And I don't have to just like answer the phone or whatever. I was, in my early 20s. Because before my daughter was even born. So my daughter's now 26. So it was a minute ago. And it occurred to me that I could maybe do something different. So at that point, then I had just finished my AA and I started like searching for what I called like a real job. And I got a position as an office manager for a small boutique brokerage firm. And when I got there, it was kind of the same thing. I was running the office initially because that was what I was hired to do. But it was a small boutique firm, meaning there was only 2 brokers in that firm, that brokerage house. And they were wanting to add more responsibility to me, which included things like putting in trades for their clients. Well, you have to be a licensed financial advisor to do those kinds of things. So they gave me 2 months to study and secure my Series 7 license.
Wow. That's intense from what I've heard.
I was like, I'm sorry, what is a Series 7 license? And how do I do that exactly? So I did. They bought me all these books and I did all the studying and I got my license. And then I was able to assist the clients in a different way. Then another light bulb moment went off that if I now possessed the same licenses that these gentlemen possess, and they're making a ton of money that I'm not making as the office manager slash sales assistant, why don't I get in the driver's seat and become the broker?
I love
So
that.
then I set out to get a brokerage job, and I got hired at, it was Dean Witter Reynolds back in the day, once upon a long time ago. And I remember interviewing with the branch manager, and of course I'm like 24, like I have no life experience. I was so nervous, but my mom sewed me a business suit because I didn't have money to go, buy a fancy suit. I had a 2-year-old, it was the whole thing. And so we went down to the local fabric store. We picked out some beautiful pinstripe fabric, got a thing, and my mom sewed me the most beautiful suit. And I walked into that interview and I got hired. And a month later, I started as a financial advisor with Dean Witter Reynolds. And that was like the beginning of the end. I just went up from there in the finance industry.
That's awesome. What a great story, Cindy. So many lessons there. First of all, you had to be willing to say yes to these opportunities to stretch yourself, because to say yes to a Series 7 exam, from what I understand, is a huge responsibility and much to learn in a short period of time. So saying yes to opportunities seems like a good thing to do to grow yourself in your career. Even now today, saying yes to opportunities is I would say a game changer. It could be a game changer for your career. And it sounds like it was.
Oh yes. I was like, I'll say yes and I'll figure out the how later. Like we'll just work it out. It's kind of like, we'll jump out of the plane and we'll build it. We'll build it on the way down. We'll build the parachute on the way down because we're just going to figure it out.
Yeah.
And it worked. Thankfully, it worked.
That's awesome. So fast forward to today. What would you say today, based on that great foundation that you had, and where you are today in your career? What would you say your formula is for successfully owning your career?
I would say my formula is definitely belief in myself. So it's not that I am not afraid. So I don't think fearlessness is a real thing. Maybe that you fear less with each success you have in life. So it's more about, for me, having the braveness versus the fearlessness, or the courage, if you will, to step out and believe in myself and my ability. Because if I look back across my life, my ability to get through hard things is 100% at this point, because I'm still standing. So I'm like, that's a pretty good track record. So we'll give it a try. And also, I've learned to release myself from the prison of a decision. And I say that to mean, we sometimes think that decisions are life sentences, that you make a decision and it's for life. Well, I don't know that all decisions are for life. This decision may be right for me right now under these exact circumstances, but I gave myself permission to change my mind. So therefore, I could switch careers, and I have multiple times in my life. I could switch business models, and I have multiple times. And it's all okay. I don't have to become a prisoner of my own decisions. So I think those are the things that have helped me, having the courage to do it and releasing myself from the need to stay married to a decision, because I took a long time to make it.
Wow, what a great visual that is for me. And really, it's so powerful what you're saying about the decision, and give us some strategies that have worked for you in shifting mindset, because that feels very important based on what you just said. So what are some things that you did that worked well for you in getting your mind to believe and understand that, yes, it's okay, I can be courageous, and yes, it's okay, I can change my mind in a decision that feels like, this is a forever decision, I get to change my mind. What did you do to change your mindset to be okay in this space?
Well, some of the things I did early on was to seek therapy back in the day for things that had happened to me in my life. And I know even in today's day, therapy still isn't as widely accepted as it should be. I think everybody should have a therapist because, well, life. And then two, I found personal development in my early 20s. And I credit that to one of the industries that I participated in once upon a long time ago, which was the network marketing industry. They're really big on personal development. And so I started to read personal development books way back then. And so I started to think that things could be different. And whether or not they were different was entirely up to me and what I decided to do. Now, I've had lots of iterations of what that looks like, obviously, over the years, but I just kept coming back to that. And I'm a huge personal development junkie. I have literally spent tens of thousands of dollars on personal development via trainings, via immersions, seminars, you name it, Tony Robbins, all the things.
Oh my God, I was going to ask you if you walked on fire yet.
I am a firewalker. Yes, I am.
Oh, I knew it. I just knew it in my bones. I was just about to ask you about that.
And I always have like a coach or a mentor that's personal development related as well as business related, so that I can continue to check myself. And also I came to the understanding that personal development is not a one and done. It's not like, well, I fixed that issue I had in my childhood and now I'm good. Because it's not that way, because life continues to happen, and we're human, we're living this human experience. And so you get sidetracked and derailed and set back and things happen. And so it was just continually coming back to renewing my commitment to myself. And the more you do it, it's kind of like a muscle. Trusting yourself is like a muscle. When you go to the gym that first time and the next day you're so sore you can barely get out of bed and you're like, holy crap, forget it. I need to take a couple days off because I hurt so bad. And it's the same thing with trusting yourself. You don't always know if your gut instinct is right, or if your intuition is correct, or if you heard the Holy Spirit right. It depends on how you look at life. But the more you do it, it's like a muscle. And so I've learned that I can trust myself, and that I can trust myself to screw up and be okay as well. Because I've screwed up many, many times in my life. And those are really, really great lessons. Sometimes I refer to them as a blessing, because it's a blessing and a lesson, because without, the downtime, sometimes I would definitely not have appreciated some of the better things that have come from it.
Wonderful, wonderful. How have you looked at risk in your career and taking risk for greater gain? And what is your advice around that?
Well, I think technically I would be considered risk averse, but
oh yes, the finance
realm.
Yes.
But realistically, for me, calculated risk is what I'm okay with, because I am a strategic thinker. It's how I'm wired. If you do Strengths Finder, like I fall into the strategic category as my top domain. So calculated risk, not just throwing caution to the wind with you only live once, like when you're in your 20s, sometimes you're just like, whatever. I believe in a calculated risk, examining the situation and saying, okay, do I have enough information to make a decision? And granted, in life, sometimes you don't have enough information, but you have to make a decision anyway. And I do want to point out that no decision is a decision. For those fence sitters that may be listening to this, no decision is a decision. You've chosen to be stuck. So I like to take a calculated risk. And so the downside risk, if I can determine what the extent of that may be, and I'm willing to accept that level of risk, then I will go ahead with the decision. If I'm not willing to accept that level of risk, then I would forego the opportunity. But even before assessing the risk, for me, I like to make values-based decisions, whether that's with money or life or friends or whatever. If it aligns with my value system, then my risk assessment isn't as great, because if it doesn't align, then I don't even need to think about it. If it does align, then I need to go into my risk assessment and say, where can it be? Like in the financial industry, we'd call it means testing, the downside, the upside risk, what is the nexus, the delta between those. And if it falls within this range, okay, we're in. And how have I ever made a decision outside the range? Yeah, on occasion, because sometimes I just wanted to. But it's a conscious choice. So I believe in making a calculated risk decision.
Yeah, a lot of people on the podcast have talked about calculated risk. I think it's interesting from your perspective because you've got that foundation, that financial planner foundation, that you can't just turn off that knowledge that you work through with your clients for so many years, right?
Mm-hmm.
You've got that understanding. So I can totally see applying that to your career and the decisions that you make in your career as well.
Yeah. One, for people to understanding the emotional component of the risk, because you may vet out the data and determine that the risk is, negligible from a data perspective, but people also need to check in emotionally to see, can they handle the ramifications of a downside risk? And that's especially important if you're an entrepreneur, because there's a lot of pressure to provide and serve and all of the things. So, understanding that those emotions are valid as well. And then for me, that's where the values base comes in. If it lines up with, my value system, then I'm going to calculate the risks. If it doesn't, easy. But if it does, emotionally, what are the risks as well? Not just the financial risks. What are the emotional risks? What is the downfall that could happen? Collateral damage to me is part of that calculated risk. And there's been times in my life that I've been a single mom. And so that determined that my calculation changed based on that circumstance of what level of risk I would be willing to assume because of the collateral damage that could ensue, as a result. So you want to take in a lot of factors into consideration.
Sure. You mentioned previously in the interview that you're a personal development junkie. And I love that because I am too. I just love that content and working on myself. Can you recommend some resources that have been helpful to you in owning your career? Books, podcasts, webinars, whatever resources that you have found valuable?
Oh, wow. Yeah, let's see. Well, one, I'm a proponent of learning as much as you can about yourself, because I think, everything starts with you and knowing and understanding who you are as a person. And there are lots of diagnostic tools available. I mentioned Strengths Finders being one, Colby, DISC, MBTI, some of the more business side type of tools. And thankfully, in my career, some of the larger corporations I worked with, Bank of America, Morgan Stanley, even the government organizations I worked with, some counties, were big on those types of tools. So I've had the ability to become certified as a practitioner as well, which is helpful. But having those tools helps give you an insight into kind of how you operate. And then, on my woo side of the house, because I am a little bit of a woo girl, I love my crystals and my oils, and I have clearing ceremonies under the full moon. Understanding things like your human design, your Enneagram, astrology, you name it. All of these things have elements that help you understand all of the beautiful parts and pieces that make up the tapestry of your life and why you behave in the way that you behave. And so for me, it's been a life, at least as an adult, long journey of learning and going through all of these different processes, all on the woo side, on the business side, and then taking what resonates, dropping what doesn't, and seeing how those pieces fit together. So from a business perspective, I would recommend doing some of those assessment tools. Don't use them though as a hammer. Use them more as a scalpel, fine tooth, so that you can understand and operate in your strengths and understand where your strengths can hold you back, because they're all double-edged swords. Some books that I love, The E-Myth Revisited is one of my favorite business books. I think one of my favorite woo books is called The Untethered Soul. Another one would be The Four Agreements.
Oh, that's my favorite. One of my favorite. He's got
Great
a
book.
fifth agreement, but the four agreements for me
Yes.
really just powerful. Yes.
Yes. So those are, and then from like a woo perspective, one of the scientifically backed principles I found is by Dr. Bruce Lipton. He studies the biology of epigenetics, and it talks about how trauma is actually passed down in DNA. And so to me, that's why it's important to understand who you are and how you operate, and ancestrally how things work. And I'm also an integrated breakthrough coach. So I'm certified in NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, hypnosis, and timeline therapy. So to me, putting all of the business tools, the woo tools, and everything together in a corporate setting is how you can help like improve leadership, improve culture, improve employee engagement, and all those kinds of things. So those are the places that I would start to look.
Wow, those are great recommendations and very thorough. Which one is your favorite of the tools? Because I've done a number of tools as well.
Oh, wow, gosh. Which one would be my favorite? Well, on the business side, I would probably say I think maybe StrengthsFinder is one of my favorites because it's, gives you your top 5, then it gives you your domains. And so understanding that these don't define you, but it's kind of your toolbox of how you do things. And then pairing up the rest of your team and seeing who has what in their toolbox allows you to have a really cohesive team. And most of the big tools, Colby, DISC, MBTI, have very similar things amongst them, so you can see the similarities between them. And if you understand the methodologies, and I'm kind of a junkie, so I've been through them all more than once. But I would say StrengthsFinder to me tends to be one of my favorites, just because it's easily applicable in a situation from a work perspective.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, this has been super fun for me, and so many commonalities is I get to know you better as well. Because I just wrote today to someone on a Facebook group about reading the E-Myth book, how powerful it is to shift from, that technician mode. So I love that book as well. Lots of good stuff here, Cindy. Thank you so much for being a guest on the Power of Owning Your Career podcast. Please tell our listeners how they can stay connected with you.
They can find me by my name, Cindy R. Constable, CONSTABLE. CindyRConstable.com is my website. It's my name on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram. So you can find me in all of the places just by my name.
Wonderful. Well, again, it has been my pleasure to have you on the show, and appreciate all the wisdom and all the nuggets that you shared with our guests.
Thank you so much, Simona. It was a pleasure being here.
Awesome. Thank you for listening to the Power of Owning Your Career podcast. It is my hope that you enjoyed today's episode. You can check out the show notes for this episode on the SimoneMorrisEnterprises.org website by clicking the podcast menu. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes and tell a friend or two about it.